Okay, so Retrospect, you have been very busy. So in no particular order, I think, though I think I'm getting it in perhaps the order of importance. You've launched Retrospect Cloud Storage, Retrospect Backup 19, and Retrospect Virtual 2022. So I guess before we drill down a little bit into each of those, why so busy? Why now? What's been going on?
Well, we've just been fortunate to really pick up steam, right? We actually have a lot more planned out coming out for the next few months.
Okay, and in terms of the sort of, I guess the headline one is the cloud storage release. So can you give us some idea of sort of what the constituent parts are, what it offers, and I guess that importantly to the users as well as are the benefits of what you're offering?
Absolutely, absolutely. So cloud storage is important for a lot of people, but it's definitely important for backup, right? One of the cardinal rules in backup is what they call the 3-2-1 plan. You want to have 3 copies of your data. You want to have at least 2 in different places, and that 2 in different places definitely is part of the cloud. So by having support for being able to back up to the cloud, you can still have local backups. You can have backups offsite in the cloud. With cloud, you also have immutable backups. This is a ransomware proof we can talk more about later. We already had support for backing up to 20, 25 different cloud providers, right? All the names you can think of, Amazon and Google and Microsoft, you name it. However, our customers come to us and they said, hey, we don't want to assemble a backup solution. We don't want to become experts in cloud technology. We just want to buy a thing and it be simple and it work. And so that's why we're introducing Retrospect Cloud Storage. Simplicity and yet power. It's extremely simple to set up and to deploy. It's one click to install. It's one click to set up, but it still has all the features that you would expect from an enterprise class storage, such as immutable backups.
Okay, and in terms of some of the technology involved, I believe that you've built it around, or certainly a key component of it is Wasabi Technologies hot cloud storage. So can you perhaps talk us through why that matters, and why you chose that?
Absolutely. So as you say, we are partnering with Wasabi, to try and build out a brick and mortar data center in not one place, but as Wasabi has 13 different regions, right? That would be a crazy amount of effort. And why did you do it, right? Whereas Wasabi already has all of this technology, has all this stuff built into it, and has been a great partner to work with. The benefits, right, of Wasabi is somewhat similar to Retrospect, right? It's got a very simple billing cycle. There's no complicated tiering plans to make it, what's wrong with all that? Well, you don't know what your bill's going to be. The other cloud vendors, they have an ingress and an egress fee. Again, you never know what your bill's going to be. With Wasabi, we were able to go, hey, it's $20 a terabyte a month. That's it. You don't need a slide for that, right? And yet at the same time, even though Wasabi has this very simple to use technology, it's still very powerful. It has all the features that any other enterprise thing, again, specifically the immutable backups. By the way, they're immutable backups, which means when I say that, it means that when you put your files up onto Wasabi, the files cannot be changed for some period of time that you, the user, get to set. Well, with Wasabi, they have a very granular file level thing where you can say, yes, I want this backup set that maybe is going to be my daily backups. I want it to be retained for at least 60 days, but I might have an older set that I'm going to use for more archival purposes. And I want it to be retained for 7 years. You can do all that in a single bucket. Many other cloud providers cannot provide that support.
And in terms of that sort of retention policy, do you provide a sort of standard template that you sort of recommend, or is it very much up to every user to work out, whether it's, they might be in the medical industry and obviously there are regulations there, finance sector, how do folks navigate their way through that?
No, that's a great question. So I would say that what we have is we have a best case practice, and yet it can be customized depending on what you're specifically doing. So that best case practice, I've already mentioned the 3-2-1. So Retrospect, of course, has been around for over 30 years. We started off backing up to tape. We still do. We back up to locally direct attached drives. We back up to NAS. These local backups can be a lot faster, both for doing the backup and also for doing the restore. You still need to get off site, so that's where the cloud piece can come in. So what we would recommend you do is you set up your backups if you've got the space, and if you don't, you can come back later. This is a big thing that's important. You're not baked in once you make these initial choices. But what we would recommend you do is you set up a local backup and then do transfers. Retrospect can just do this automatically and do transfers to the cloud storage. This way you get to have your cake and eat it too, in that you've got both on-site and off-site backups. You can also not need to do the backups twice. You don't need to keep hitting these endpoints over and over every time you're wanting a separate copy. So that's sort of the template. And then how long you want to do the retention? Well, by default, we pick 6 months, but many people might say, that's great, but I actually want to have a mix of things. Or maybe many people will say, that sounds great to me. It's something that you can either leave as our default. It's a useful default. You can customize it when you set it up. You can come back later and say, you know what, so I really want to do, I really want to have this, and make those changes later.
And in terms of the sort of hybrid storage, hybrid backup approach, do you have a handle on where your customers, I mean, are most of your customers sort of fairly well advanced on that journey? Hence, as you say, they came to you and asked for this product which you've provided, or are you perhaps surprised that there are still a significant minority that are doing things that were perhaps, I won't say when Noah was building his ark, but perhaps haven't moved as near to where they need to be? Just some thoughts as to what you see out there.
We have people across the board, and I've been with the business over 25 years now. I've stopped being surprised about what people do, right? So we have people who they've got a few machines, and typically we see a very heterogeneous environment. We've got Macs, maybe they got one Windows box, maybe they got a bunch of Windows, but they've got one Mac that somebody in the art department or whatever is using. Retrospect can handle all these cases. And so that's one reason, that's one of the challenges, is to make the setup be something that can handle the default case of the 80% of the users. We have a virtual product, right? Retrospect is sort of the classic template, if you will, that we look at. Retrospect has a virtual environment. We use it as part of our build systems and a part of our testing framework. It's not, a core piece in the sense of it's all we run on, but it is there. And so Retrospect has two different products. The flagship product, Retrospect Backup, for backing up physical environments. But we also have Retrospect Virtual, and that's for backing up virtual environments. And you might need one, you might need both. It's up to the user. It's up to the company.
And in terms of the, I think you, at the start of the conversation, you mentioned that dreaded word, ransomware. Is that what you're increasingly finding with customers? I mean, clearly, you've been in the storage industry a while, so backups have been around, and they make sense for any number of reasons. But is ransomware and the threat of that what's driving a lot of people to, if not reinvent, at least reevaluate and make more robust their storage infrastructure?
Absolutely. So backup has always been something that everyone knew they needed to do, right? In the same way that they knew they needed to go to the doctor and they knew they needed insurance, but there was always a reason to put it off. Whereas after Colonial Pipeline, no one, even my own father, who doesn't even use machines and use computers, he even knows about ransomware and its importance. So it's one of the things that's been driving Retrospect development. And the previous version in 18, we came out with anomaly detection. So here we are doing our backups. We're scanning the drives to do that. We can tell you that something weird is going on because we see something that's different, right? Now, maybe that's ransomware, maybe it's not. And so one of the new features is bringing out that analytics that we already have, that reporting, to say, hey, we see that something's strange about this backup. You can now go and do a comparison. You can look between this backup and the other one. You can find out what files were affected. You can go and check those files out, see if they're actually readable. You can do all that, and a lot of other things are coming out as far as this release. OS compliance, one of the big threat vectors here, right? For not just ransomware, but viruses and just a lot of sort of what we'll call buggy behavior, is people running really old operating systems. And so one of the features is a report where all the backup server and all the endpoints, they show up on a report with their operating system and a flag basically saying, yep, that one's good, or no, this is out of date. You might want to look into that.
And in terms, again, in more recent times, the focus, I mean, clearly the backup is the sort of bedrock, but recovery is important as well, because you know it's great to have all that data, but if you can't sort of recover it and carry on your business in a meaningful period of time, problems arise. So I'm just interested your sort of, I know people quote all manner of how quickly and stuff, but just the recovery aspect of the offering, how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number of things going on in that mix, and it's a great question, by the way, because so one of the purposes of the anomaly detection is to find out that you need to do your restore sooner than later. Because what typically happens in a ransomware deployment is the ransomware somehow gets onto the machine that's going to be attacked, and it does nothing. It just sits there. Why is it doing that? Because the backups continue to happen, right? And many companies, unfortunately, who might only be doing local backups, or maybe they are going to the cloud, but they only keep the last copy. Well, time goes by and 30 days go by, let's say. And now the ransomware kicks off and it encrypts all your files and puts up a message. And the person says, great, no problem. I'm just going to go to my backups. I'm going to restore. And they restore with the malware. They restore the malware, right? Well, and therefore they didn't get very far. And so a very frustrating thing. Even if they kept their backups, right, for longer than 30 days, which again, you can do with immutable backups, the malware is still there and they don't want to go back 30 days because you can imagine, ask yourself, would you be okay losing 30 days of work? No. So with Retrospect, again, with this ransomware identification, you can go and actually identify where the malware is. And then Retrospect is one of the only products I know that can do this. You can create a filter. We have filters both for backing up, but we can also use these filters for when we do the restore. And so you can say, hey, I want to create a filter. I don't want to restore that file, or I don't want to restore those files. And so when you do the restore of yesterday's perfectly good backup that had this malware on it, it's now been purged of the malware. That's an important feature.
And then moving on to the Retrospect Backup, Retrospect Virtual. So if I understand it correctly, they're not exactly subsets of the cloud storage, and you mean that, but overall, if you add the three together, you've got this sort of complete backup solution. Is that how it works?
That is correct. So again, some companies don't have any virtual, in which case they're fine just using Retrospect Backup. Some people might only do virtual, or they are only primarily interested in virtual, and so they could just get this Retrospect Virtual product. Retrospect Virtual 2022, it's 3 times faster. We can talk about more of that. It's 3 times faster. It's got smaller backups, right? It comes with support of the latest and greatest version of HyperV 2022. It's already been certified for that. So this virtual product is a standalone product. It can also, of course, back up to the cloud, back up locally. So just like the Retrospect Backup product is, but it's just targeted more for a virtual environment, backing up to those kinds of virtual machines.
Okay, and Retrospect 19, what I think as well, we're going to talk about, you've already pre-announced, if you like, 19.1, but let's stick with 19 for now. So what have you added in the release 19?
So I think we've covered most of the great things. So the cloud support, of course, is our huge one, right? Again, the fact that we have this simple to deploy setup where you basically can buy the product, you can come in and you can get a free trial of both Retrospect and the cloud storage. You go up to back up to 1 terabyte of data. This allows you to figure out what kind of environment are you needing, what kind of data storage plan do you really want to have. You can start as low as 500 gigabytes. That's $12. But after that, it's just, as I said, $20 a terabyte a month. Simple math, don't need to write that down. Once you figure that out and roll that forward, right, you're going to be able to use all the features of Retrospect with this Retrospect Cloud Storage, all the things that we've already talked about, basically being able to have immutable backups that no matter what, you yourself with your own administrator credentials cannot alter those backups for the period of retention, right? Which again, by default is 6 months. You can change that so that future backups or backups that are going to happen can be either less or more, but whatever that is, when that may happen, right, when a ransomware event may be triggered, you can then go using our newer reports to find out what files were affected, if they were affected. And also you can look at OS compliance. This is using our management console, by the way. The management console is an online free service that we have for any Retrospect user. You basically will create an account. When you go through and you buy Retrospect, we'll send you an email that will actually take you to the management console. If you don't have an account, you just type in an email and a password. You click the little verification email that comes in. Bam, your account's already set up. We've already added the machine, the license code, and built this machine that's going to be this backup server for you. You can have a one-click install. It's already customized, knows the license codes, has provisioned the account if the account has cloud storage baked in. One-click install, one-click setup where you confirm, yes, this is what I want. Super, super easy to deploy. These are the features, these are the primary features in the version 19 that is coming out very soon now.
Okay, and as I say, I'm pretty sure that I've read 19.1, you've sort of flagged up what's going to happen then. I think that's the back end of the summer, if that's the right time frame. So what else is in the pipeline then for people to look out for?
Oh no, that's a very good question. So the thing I perhaps should have led with on this is that version 19. So Wasabi has 13 different regions, right? And in the US, in Europe, in Asia Pacific, they've got a lot of different regions. We are only going to be supporting, for the very first launch, we're only supporting one region in the US. The reason for this is we want to make sure that we get this whole process completely seamless for our customer base. But in the next couple of months, we're going to be rolling out support for all these other regions. And again, 13 different regions. That's a big win for a lot of our customer base is outside of the US, and that of course is super important. It's critical for them to have a more local backup support. So the other things coming out, multi-factor authentication. Again, talking about security. This is super important for us. This is again for those of you who might be missing what we mean when we say that. This means that when you are going to log into the actual backup server, and again, whether you're logging into the native backup server that's actually doing the work, or you're logging into our management console, because after all, that's an important piece of the security. You don't rely on just a password, right? That's something that's relatively easily hacked in the modern world. You actually are using two things. It's the classic thing where you can either have it text you a message on your phone, or you can use an authenticator app. But in any case, you'll need to have two ways of doing this. It's an optional feature, but it is going to be something that is going to make your backup environment much more secure. Those are what's coming out in 19.1.
Okay, and I believe, I mean, you've referenced the management console to a certain extent, but I believe you've updated that. Is that anything outside of what you've talked about with it? Yeah, where are we with that?
Absolutely. So it is true. The OS compliance report I mentioned, that is on the management console. Also, what we're rolling out is users and roles. So today, currently, the management console, it's one account, one user. There's really nothing else to it. You can add more people to it, but they all have the same level of access. We're going to be rolling out more and more granularity. We've had a lot of customers say, hey, I want to have a group of users. I want them to be able to see the reports, but I don't want them to accidentally do something. So we want them to be read-only. These groups, there need to be administrators. Maybe this group is actually somewhere in between. I want them to be able to make these changes, but not changes over here. And so that kind of access and management is something that's going to be rolled out to the management console.
Okay, and then virtual 2022. Again, you talked through some of those features. Anything else that you didn't cover, or
well, just to kind of cover it again. So the virtual 22 is a lot faster. It's 3 times faster for everybody. That's doing both backups and restores. But depending on your file size, if you have larger files, it's actually even faster than that. It's up to 8 times faster. The reason why it's faster, by the way, and the reason why it matters about the file size is that it's smaller backups. We are introducing for the first time block level deduplication. This block level deduplication makes for much smaller files. And the larger the files, the better your compression, and therefore the faster your backups will happen. And again, I do want to point out HyperV 2022 did come out. It takes a long time to certify against any new environment. This has already been fully certified for that. We were already supporting both VMware and HyperV, but just to say it, we are now also supporting HyperV 2022.
And just following up, earlier you mentioned about the anomaly detection aspect of your technology, and I'm intrigued. I mean, one of my, I won't say hobbies because that sounds a bit sad, but I've followed the sort of AI ops conversation, and I'm intrigued by that as a technology, but also companies like yourselves. So you've got anomaly detection, which is one of the things I help. So I'm just intrigued as to how you decide, if you like, what intelligence to incorporate, what you want to do, and what you leave up to, something like AOps or, a machine learning program. How do you, negotiate that maze, if you like, of what to do and what to leave to someone else?
Absolutely. And I want to start off by saying that while we are investigating what we'll call machine learning algorithms to try and make for a better fit, right? We'd like to have fewer, because unfortunately the situation is that, from the backup perspective, there's not a lot of difference perhaps between a ransomware event where one set of files seemingly goes away because they're being renamed and encrypted and a bunch of new files coming in, versus somebody like, I'm a coder, so they go and they download a Git repository that's got 1 million files. It's like, oh, I'm going to back all these. Maybe I'm going to trigger that as anomaly detection. So machine learning might help us with some of this. But right now, today, it's a simple process. It is something that the users can customize. It's just how many files changed. Again, we've seen, it's pretty reliable, that over and over again, 5, 10, 20% of your files are changing, not more than that. We don't want to look at files outside of the user files, because those are in fact not usually encrypted, right? Because otherwise the machine stops working. You can't, the kidnapper can't put out their message. So we look at the files that they're going to be encrypted only. You, the user, can go in and actually edit that filter. You can say, oh, you know what? I want you to exclude this folder. It's a Dropbox that's changing literally every day, so it's not useful to try and look at that. You can add another filter and say, oh, you were excluding that. I want you to actually look at that. You can decide what that threshold is, maybe 60%. Again, we're trying to be conservative, if you will, but you might go, no, I want to hear. Go ahead, and if you go over 30%, I'd rather get an email that I then look at and then find out is a false alarm. Whatever the user needs to do, they can make those changes.
Okay, and maybe one other thing, I haven't asked anyone this for years, so apologies, but back in the old days, dare I say, there was the 70-30 or even 80-20 rule. So, the vast majority of data created was used once and then never touched again, but stored and backed up and all the rest of it. Are you aware, is that still very much the case, or with the digital world we're in, as more of the data created used more frequently? Just any idea of what's on?
Well, I think that there is more data being created, for sure. That, right? That's absolutely true, right? More and more of our world is digitally formed and stored. So no doubt about that. Is the percentage roughly the same? I think it's probably not changed as much. And I think that is something that, if anything, we probably see a higher percentage, where, because we are creating so much stuff every day, right? And so the thing you created this week, you're not touching it. It doesn't mean you don't care if you have access to it. You might refer to it, right? But you're not actively working with it. So this is one reason why. So I've mentioned the block level deduplication. Retrospect has block level deduplication, but sort of our first line of defense is just file level deduplication. We do a backup, we back up everything. The next time we do the backup, we see 70-80% of those files, they're still there. Well, we already have them backed up. I don't need to back them up again, especially if you're going up to the cloud, right? And so we basically match against the things we already know we backed up, and we're only going to back up the new files. So that's how that is handled. So.
Okay, and maybe just finally, we sort of talked about ransomware, one or two things. Are there any other sort of storage pain points you are helping your customers, or where your customers are wanting to deal with, or anything you can see on the horizon? Or is the sort of storage industry fairly, I won't say calm, but at least, it's well understood at the moment? Or do you think there are any banana skins sort of waiting to happen?
Oh, well, I think it's really coming down to the things we're already doing. Why is it that people don't do a backup? Because it's not easy, right? It's a lot of questions and a lot of things you don't really, this is not your core skill set, right? And anyone who has tried to walk through setting up cloud provision, right, on any of the platforms, it is a bewildering array of questions and things that you don't know what the answer is. You're like, I don't know what, these weird things. And for example, going back to the retention, many cloud providers, if you don't set up the bucket ahead of time to say, I want to be able to do retention, whether I want it later or now. If you don't set it up at the beginning, well, too bad, you can't go back and put it on. So it's a bunch of trap doors unfortunately, for our users. And they know that that's coming. They've heard horror stories of everything else. So if you can't make it simple, they're not going to use it. And therefore, they're not going to be protected. So it's the charter, if you will, for Retrospect is to make a simple product that can expose all the tool set, the features. Retrospect, 30 years of work here, there's just a ton of features, but it can be complicated. So we have to make it simple for people to use and yet still make it be powerful and helpful for the customer base. That is certainly a big key piece. The other piece is, again, it's kind of part of the same thing, the analytics, the reporting. We are working very hard on trying to make our reporting more clear. The problem is not that we don't have enough data. The problem is we've got too much data, right? We've got too many pieces of information. And again, our users really want things boiled down to, what is it I need to know? What do I need to do, right? That's it for us.
That's brilliant. I mean, you've given me a lot of your time, so I appreciate that. And thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate it.